Guys, it's your best boxing friends. I'm Kelsey. This is Rachel. Rachel, I want to talk about America's welterweight champion, and I'm talking about Terence Crawford. You know, that's why I'm wearing my Dallas Cowboy stuff here, America's team, and I want to talk about America's champion, Terence Crawford. Now, I know Crawford is a big, big fan of the Dallas Cowboys. He likes the Packers, which is fine. I mean, nobody's perfect, but Crawford to me is near perfect in what I like to see in fighters. What I like to see in fighters, Rachel, is what I saw on Saturday night in his victory. He was fighting an opponent who turned out to be a lot better than maybe most people thought. A guy who hurt Crawford, and yet Crawford has this, I don't know, single-minded, mean streak-like approach of, I'm going to do this my way, and I'm going to take you out. And he did it. And that's something I don't commonly see in people that are at the top of pound-for-pound list. It's just, you know.
Well, I would say he doesn't. It's not a do things my way approach, because anytime I've heard Terence Crawford talk after a fight, he is very obedient to what his trainers tell him to do. The first time I saw Terence Crawford fight was in person in Dallas. It was really early on in his career, and I didn't know if he was going to win the fight or not. And what he said is that he got in there and he boxed for some rounds, and then towards the middle of the fight, his coach told him, all right, finish it. And then he just flipped, did it. But that up until that point, he just did what his coach told him to do. The same thing with this fight. Because some people were like, well, I don't think he should have been fighting, I think he was fighting southpaw.
He was fighting southpaw, and he has the ability to do both.
Right. But he was like, that's what my trainer told me to do. So that's what he did. And then when his trainer told him to switch, he switched. You know what I mean? And the fight changed after that. It was a better...
He did switch.
Yeah.
Well, it totally worked for Crawford. And what I mean by does what he wants to do in there, I more mean that Terence Crawford, and if you want to say it's his team, but he goes in there with an idea that he's going to do what he wants to do. Where other people might say, well, I don't know why Terence Crawford isn't boxing this guy. Crawford's like, I'm going to knock this guy out. And he does. And he seems to open himself up more to punches that maybe he wouldn't have to take if he didn't want to. But he wants to win the fight, how he wants to win it. And he's just so committed to what he does in the ring.
I definitely see very committed. I was just pointing out that we've talked about other fighters and the discipline that it takes to be in the ring and to stay the course, whatever that course is. And Terence Crawford, and I think you're saying the same thing, that's what he does. Whatever the course is for a fight, he has a discipline to stay that course. We've seen other fighters who get in the ring with a plan, and then they're like, screw it. And they get into the way they really want to fight, or their old way of fighting or something, habits. They get into something, and then sometimes they lose the fight when that happens.
Yeah, I just love watching Crawford fight, and I love that he doesn't get involved in the theatrics of promotional antics or all that other stuff that a lot of people get into. He just seems like he's authentically himself, sometimes even to what some people would argue is detrimental to his overall career. But I don't know, there's something I respect. I definitely respect how he carries himself, the things he says, the way he fights, and how excellent he is. We're talking about a guy that was lineal champion at lightweight, the first undisputed champion in a long, long time in boxing at 140. And now that was his, I think, third or fourth defense of the WBO title that he won at welterweight. That's a big deal. He's definitely one of the top pound-for-pound boxers in the sport. And I hope that he gets the big fights that everybody wants to see him in, right? Whether it's even Sean Porter, like we talked about before, would be a great fight, or everybody wants to see him fight Earl Spence. Obviously that's...
Well, I was really glad that Andre Ward got that full interview with him, and they got to show pieces of it before his fight this past weekend, because I don't know, we've been hearing a lot from the PBC side and they just don't mention Crawford. It's like he doesn't exist. And so it was nice to get this interview, and Ward was able to to coax out of
We
Crawford
trust
some
Andre Ward.
energy, and that's what Ward said. But that's one of the things where it's like, well, if you can't like give a little bit more in interviews, like say Andre Ward hadn't interviewed him, well then this weekend I think that interview was a big deal in showing Crawford, hearing his voice, seeing him, take ownership of where he's at in the division. Had we not had that interview, we would have had a fight. He would have won. But I think it wouldn't have it wouldn't be as much when you have like this, like all this over here from PBC that's like, he don't exist,
He definitely does exist. He definitely has done more historically important things than Earl Spence has done. I just went over the list of them, so that kind of sometimes is missed. He doesn't maybe have as good a resume at welterweight, but this is a third weight class, right? Mm-hmm. Earl Spence is still in his first weight class, so I think that people forget that because we're all about what have you done in the last year.
Right.
And Spence had a great year this last year and has had a great run at welterweight. Thanks so much for watching our show. We appreciate you liking, commenting, and subscribing. And keep coming back every day.